Most magnesium on store shelves absorbs at about 4%. 4. The bottle in your cabinet is probably one of them. Magnesium runs more than 300 reactions in your body. Sleep, heart, mood, muscle function. There are 5 forms on the shelf: oxide, citrate, glycinate, threonate, malate. Most of them barely work. Here's which ones the research actually picks up. So what does magnesium actually do? It's a cofactor for over 300 enzymes. Translation: magnesium is the spark plug for hundreds of reactions that keep you alive. Things like energy production, genetic repair, insulin signaling, calcium balance, and vitamin D activation. None of those reactions happen without magnesium sitting in the right place at the right time. Here's the problem. About half of American adults don't hit the recommended daily intake from food alone. Modern crops contain less magnesium than they did a century ago because industrial farming depletes the soil. In-processed food strips it. Coffee flushes it. Alcohol blocks absorption. So a lot of people supplement. They walk into the supplement aisle, they see those 5 bottles lined up: oxide, citrate, glycinate, threonate, malate. They grab the cheapest one, because how different can they really be? The answer is night and day. One form is essentially water-soluble, the other is essentially a rock. Here's the study that started this whole conversation. Published in 2001 in the journal Magnesium Research, researchers gave healthy adults 4 different magnesium supplements and measured how much actually made it into the bloodstream through urinary excretion. Magnesium oxide, the cheapest form, the one stuffed into most generic supplements, 4%. Read that again, 4%. That means if you take a 500 milligram magnesium oxide pill, your body sees about 20 milligrams. The other 96% passes through. Some of it just sits in your gut, acting as a laxative, which is why a lot of cheap magnesium supplements come with that warning label about loose stools. A 1990 paper from the University of Texas Southwestern compared oxide to citrate head-to-head. Citrate dissolves in your stomach, oxide barely does. In the trial, citrate raised serum magnesium meaningfully, while oxide barely moved the needle compared to placebo. A 2003 trial took it further. 46 healthy adults, 300 milligrams a day for 60 days, 3 different forms head-to-head. Citrate won. Amino acid chelate came in second. Oxide produced no measurable difference from placebo, none. So if you've been taking magnesium oxide and wondering why you don't feel anything, there's a reason.
Now let's walk through what actually works. There are roughly 5 forms worth knowing about. Each one has a different job. Citrate is the most studied bioavailable form. It's what shows up in the trials with the biggest effects on blood pressure and constipation. Cheap, widely available. Data goes back to the early 90s. Glycinate is magnesium bound to the amino acid glycine. Glycine is calming on its own. The combination shows up in the trials looking at sleep and anxiety. It tends to be the gentlest on the stomach. People who get loose stools from citrate usually tolerate glycinate fine. Then there's malate, bound to malic acid. Malic acid is part of the energy cycle inside your cells. This form tends to show up in protocols targeting fatigue and muscle soreness. Threonate is the newest one. The name shows up everywhere on social media as smart magnesium. There's a reason for the hype. A 2010 paper in the journal Neuron showed magnesium threonate crossed the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms in rats. Brain magnesium went up, memory improved. The mechanism involved upregulating receptors in the hippocampus. The catch? That study was in rats. The human evidence is still early, but the mechanism is real and the form is unique. Finally, there's taurate, bound to taurine. Taurine has its own cardiovascular research base. The combination shows up in protocols targeting blood pressure and heart rhythm. Now here's where the research gets interesting. A 2017 systematic review pulled together 18 magnesium studies on anxiety and stress. The pattern? Magnesium supplementation produced beneficial effects on subjective anxiety in people who were already vulnerable: mild anxiety, premenstrual mood changes, postpartum mood. The effect was strongest in people whose blood magnesium started low, which is about half the adult population. The sleep evidence is also striking. A 2012 Iranian trial gave elderly insomniacs 500 milligrams of magnesium oxide for 8 weeks, even using the worst absorbed form on the market. Sleep efficiency improved, sleep time went up, cortisol dropped, melatonin rose. That's the low bioavailability form pulling that result. So when people switch to citrate or glycinate at equivalent elemental doses, the response tends to be even bigger. Then the cardiovascular angle. A 2018 review in the journal Open Heart made the case that subclinical magnesium deficiency is a hidden driver of heart disease in the modern world. The argument? Standard blood tests miss it because over 99% of body magnesium sits inside cells, not in serum. So your blood work can look normal while your cells are running on empty. The author tied subclinical deficiency to high blood pressure, arrhythmia, arterial calcification, heart failure risk. One mineral, 5 systems: sleep, heart, brain, muscle, mood, all running on the same cofactor, which is why the form on the bottle is the variable that decides whether any of this matters for you.
Quick note before we go further. This is research, not medical advice. The numbers ahead come from studies, not a prescription. Talk to your doctor before adding anything new, especially if you're on medication. So which form for which goal? The research lines up cleanly here. For general supplementation and digestive regularity, the trials that produced the biggest serum response used magnesium citrate. Doses in the literature run around 300 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium per day. When the goal is sleep or anxiety, the studies showing improvement used a mix of forms, but glycinate shows up most often in the well-tolerated category. The dosing in the literature lands in the same window. For cognition, the threonate work is still mostly preclinical. The rat data is striking. The human data is early. The dose the threonate researchers published works out to around 144 milligrams of elemental magnesium. On the muscle recovery and energy front, malate shows up in fatigue protocols. The supporting evidence is thinner than the citrate or glycinate evidence, but the mechanism through the cellular energy cycle is well established. A pattern that keeps showing up in longevity research protocols is split dosing. The literature describes citrate or glycinate earlier in the day for general supplementation, with a second glycinate dose closer to bedtime in the sleep trials. The total elemental magnesium across the protocols stays in the same 300 to 400 milligram window. Quick honesty, magnesium isn't for everyone. People with kidney disease can't clear excess magnesium and risk dangerous buildup. Magnesium also interacts with certain antibiotics, bisphosphonates, and some blood pressure medications. So if you've got a chronic condition or take prescription medication, this is a doctor conversation first. For everyone else, the data is hard to argue with. A mineral that runs hundreds of reactions in your body, and a generic supplement aisle full of the one form that barely absorbs. That gap is why this matters. Every study cited in this video is linked in the description. Take them to your doctor. Ask about your magnesium status. If you want more research-backed deep dives, subscribe to Mr. Biomaxer. The next one looks at how a 50-cent plant compound works like Ozempic for blood sugar. That video is right here. This is research, not medical advice. Always check with your doctor before changing any supplement routine.